Hello guys, this is Alan with a ranked M20 core set best out of one draft. I'm going to do a couple of these before we head into Throne of Eldraine tomorrow, and it's going to begin in 14 hours. But for the most part, I want to do as much as I can because I do love this draft set for 2020 before we move on to Eldraine. So yeah, let's celebrate before it ends. Alright, so pack one, pick one, what are we looking at? Our rare Embodiment of Agonies is a good card. A pretty strong above average 3-drop. It does have its problems, however, that it does take a little bit of work to get the +1/+1 counters going. But if you can get a pretty big flying creature for its cost. This is not a card I see myself exactly playing on turn 3 due to the fact that it's more of a finisher in the late game where you already have a lot of stuff in the graveyard. This is most likely going to excel in black-green since that is the archetype that's looking to put a bunch of stuff into the graveyard, and black-blue where there are a lot of instances and sorceries that you cast that can fuel this creature. However, that being said, this is not something you really want to cast too early. It is a fine late game finisher for the most part, but it does take a little bit of work to build around. I don't know if the double black is a bit too much of a liability. Probably not, because this is the card that you most likely want to be playing with black as either a strong primary color or a secondary color. So I mean, I don't really have a problem with the cost of this card. To be honest, it's just like the problem is that it just takes a little bit more work to build around. And even if you do build around it and you make a big giant flyer, is it worth it? That's another question to consider. Let's say this becomes a 5/5 flyer or a 6/6 flyer in the late game. That's pretty strong, assuming that the opponent doesn't have any removal spells to deal with it. Otherwise, let's say the opponent does have an answer to deal with this creature. You just have a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, and you even if you cast this on 3 in the late game, it does absolutely nothing. Also, this is not a really good card you want to be playing against an aggressive. I mean, this is not a card that you want in your opening hand against an aggressive opponent. You really don't want to put like a 3-mana 2/2 Death Toucher Flyer on turn 3 against an aggressive opponent, simply because they can shock and remove it off the bat. So that's one thing to consider. Looking at our commons, they're not really good. They're really awful. The only common that stands out is Cloud Conceer and maybe Wing Words, but Cloud Conceer is way better than Wing Words for sure. So it's really between these two. Always in the pack scenario, pick one scenario, you have to find the most powerful, high-powered level cards in the pack in case we spot the first two. Now the second question we have to ask ourselves is does the flexibility of a card outweigh the commitment to a more specific archetype? Do you pick the build around over the card that you can easily cast and get value out of it ASAP? In that case, that card would be Cloud Conceer. Doesn't really take much work besides casting this on 3 and drawing a card. Pretty nice effect with the buy itself, while Embodiment of Agonies is a much more higher build around that requires you to cast a bunch of multiple spells before you can actually get this with enough counters. Now, with the build around payoff, is it worth casting a giant flyer? That's one thing to consider. Perhaps. If Cloud Conceer was in the pack, probably I'd pick the Embodiment of Agonies. But I think I'm leaning towards Cloud Conceer because it's just a really good card. 3-mana 2/1 puts on Invasive Flyer and draws a card. Is right off the bat is fair enough by itself. This is a card that is much more easier to cast on turn 3 and is a nice card that helps you stabilize against aggressive opponents, just in case they have a 2-powered 2 toughness creature, and you can easily trade this off. While Embodiment of Agonies is most likely a card that's going to be stuck in your hand in the early game. Until you empty your hand and play a bunch of spells. In the late game, this can be a pretty big body. So Embodiment of Agonies is a good card, don't get me wrong. The question is, I don't know if the payoff is really worth it. If we can build around this, which we will probably need some mill synergies. We need to mill ourselves, play a bunch of trade off a bunch of creatures, use instances and sorceries and whatnot. And this can be pretty strong. But again, it's a card that you need to build around. It's not really reliable to cast exactly on turn 3. It's most likely going to just sit in your hand. And even if you play this in the late game as a big flyer, the opponent can answer it easily with cards like Murder, Plummet, Sleep Paralysis, and Pacifism. So yeah, it does have its drawbacks. It doesn't have any enter the battlefield triggers as well. Let's say you play a bunch of stuff and then you use this as a curve topper. The opponent could still have an answer to kill this. It's kind of a chance. The card's a bit of a risk. That's what I'm trying to say. Either your opponent has something to remove this card when it becomes a big flyer, or they don't. And if they do, then you're kind of in big trouble. You are basically playing this in the late game and not getting enough value off of it, or it fares really well and you have a nice big flyer onto the battlefield. But other than that, I think Cloud Concealer again is much more easier cast. Just drawing a card off the bat without building around it too much is simply what we're looking for. So yeah, don't really want to commit myself into blue-black or green-black right away, and I really want a card I can cast reliably on curve. Sometimes, let's say you don't have any playables in your hand and the opponent is just rushing you down. Sometimes you might have to cast this Embodiment of Agonies as a 1/1 Death Touch flyer, which can be okay, but it's pretty underwhelming, especially if the opponent is just constantly attacking you with small creatures. So yeah, I can see this card having some problems, but either way, the payoff seems pretty good, but it's not busted in any sense. It doesn't necessarily win you the game if you get this with a bunch of counters or if you can pull it off. It's just a good card that helps you win the game and act as a nice late game finisher. But that being said, yeah, I just want to cast my card on curve. Easy Cloud Concealer. Alright, followed up with Cloud Concealer, what do we have? Mask is an okay 2-drop. Woodland Champion takes a bit of build around. Pacifism is a pretty strong removal spell. Maybe we can move into blue-white flyers, or we can abandon blue or abandon white, vice versa. But I'm a big fan of blue-white flyers in this format, and it's usually a good archetype to situate yourself in. The rest of the other commons are okay. If we picked up Embodiment of Agonies, we'd probably be looking at this Gorging Vulture. And we missed out on a powerful removal spell, such as Pacifism. I think Pacifism beats Unsummon for the most part. I don't think I'm going to take this, even if there's a Miscreant and I can build around this quite easily. Sometimes you just need the efficient removal spell, and Pacifism just does the work for you. So yeah, easy Pacifism. Move ourselves towards a blue-white Flyers archetype. Alright, followed up with the Pacifism. What do we pick up? Sky Knight Vanguard's a pretty good card. 2 mana, 1/2 that generates a creature token every single time it attacks, but that token has to be tapped and attacking. Nice payoff for going Boros aggro in red, white. Another great white card. There is an Ironroot Warlord, which is excellent in white-green. Totally serviceable splash card. At 3 mana, I think is way more easier to cast than Splash 4 and cast over a Sky Knight Vanguard, which you want to play exactly on turn 2. But that being said, I think the Ironroot Warlord has a higher power level compared to the Sky Knight Vanguard, simply because this can be in a powerful attacker and blocker. If you create the token in the late game, you don't necessarily need to attack with it. Rather, Sky Knight Vanguard is expecting the opponent to not have any blockers on turn 2. And you're just pinging the opponent for 1 every turn and putting up a soldier token that's getting eaten. But it's a strong card regardless if the opponent has nothing to deal with, if the opponent can't deal with this. But I would rather prefer the Ironroot Warlord. What are great cards in this pack? There's another great green card. Silverback Shaman is an excellent 5-drop. 5 mana, 5/4 trample that replaces itself when it dies. So really in this pack, I think it's just between these two cards. In terms of power level, which one's higher? Probably just the Ironwood Warlord. It's a great mana sink in the late game. You can make a bunch of 1/1 tokens. The 5 toughness is relevant. We're already in white, so it goes well with our pacifism. The Ironwood Warlord can be a problem with the Cloud Concealer. Simply because of the fact that these two colors don't really go along with it. But given that we have pacifism, we can actually end up in either white, blue, splashing green, or white, green, maybe splashing blue. Cloud Concealer is not really a good splash card, but we can easily give this up. Otherwise, Silverback Shaman would be a more flexible choice. Maybe keep us open in either green, blue, or green, white. But I think the upside of Ironwood Lord beats Silverback Shaman, that I'm just going to take it here. Plus, we are already in white, so it's a nice card that kind of commits us to a color. And I think the power level is significantly higher than Silverback Shaman, that I'm just going to take it. Silverback does get expensive around 5 mana. But then again, we are splashing this, so it could go late. It might be a late curve topper, but I think it's way more powerful than Silver Shaman. And given that we're in pacifism, it ties us up to a single color, primary color right off the bat, and easily splashable. We don't need to commit ourselves to green. And I think this is just way more powerful than Silver Shaman. Silverback Shaman. I'm just gonna take it here. So yep, Ironwood Warlord it is. Alright, follow up with these 3 cards. What did we pick up? Inspiring Captain. Even though it's white, it's easily filler and replaceable. It gets pretty expensive at 4 mana. You can play Inspired Charge or vice versa. Inspired Captain, Inspired Charge, vice versa. But I don't think we take it here. The strongest cards in this pack overall are Metropolis Price, adds a pretty nice 2-drop. There is a Lavakin Brawler and the Mammoth Spider. Lavakin Brawler is probably the most strongest card in this pack, but I don't think it's a busted common. I think it's just slightly higher than all these cards. It does get expensive at 4 mana. It is very powerful in multiples, but it does commit us to a 4th color, which I don't think I really want to do reliably. In fact, let me think here. Even though this is powerful, I don't think the rest of the other commons are less powerful. That they aren't they aren't good enough to be compared to Lavakin Brawler. I think it's only powerful by a slight number. That being said, it does work well with Cloud Concealer, but it moves us into a 4th color. So the choices we have here are Metropolis Sprite as a nice 2-drop, Centaur Courser as a decent 3-drop blocker, and a Mammoth Spider as a fine curve topper that has game against reach creatures. I think it's between these 3, to be honest. Looking at our deck, if we want to move into green, it does make Ironwood Warlord a little bit easier to cast while splashing if we commit it to white and green off the bat. Either way, we did pick up a Cloud Concealer. I'm thinking of Ironwood Warlord as a splash, which could be right or wrong. Like 2-drops are hard to find, and I think I'd rather solidify my game with 2-drops. Metropolis Sprite does work really well in a white-blue Fliers deck. Sometimes you need something on 2 exactly to ping down the opponent or to trade off, and Metropolis Sprite fits the bill. Centaur Courser is a fine blocker, but it's nothing exceptional. Same with Mammoth Spider. I think the upside of having a 2-drop is much more higher than something in the late game that I think I want to pick the Metropolis Sprite. Either way, again, I can still splash white or green for the Ironwood Warlord. I don't really want to commit myself to 2 colors off the bat, otherwise this Cloud Concealer was kind of a whiff in the pick 1 pack 1. But you never know. White, green can be serviceable, but I want to keep my flexibility here just because the power level of these cards don't seem pretty high. So, yeah, I like the Metropolis Sprite. Let's just take it here. Alright, followed up with the Metropolis Sprite. What did we pick up? Well, there's a Loyal Pegasus as a fine 1-drop. This is definitely a nice aggressive card if you are able to play a lot of 2-drops and 1-drops in your deck. Serviceable Flyer in a blue-white Flyers archetype. What else is there? Some okay black cards, nothing much. If we want to stick with green, there's a Brightwood Tracker as a fine late game mana sink, but not an amazing card. Just something that you won't mind having one of. It doesn't necessarily win you the game all that often, and it does cost a lot to activate the ability. 4 mana 2/4 is okay as a blocker, but usually by then you want something a little bit better. So yeah, I think I'm fine taking the evasive flyer here, keep myself in white. There's a possibility that I should move into black because maybe white is not open enough, but these cards I'm fine passing up on with the current configuration we have now. And I just want to build around what we currently have to get a deck going. So yep, Loyal Pegasus it is. Alright, followed with the Loyal Pegasus. What are the best cards in this pack? There's a Goblin Smuggler as an excellent 3-drop card in red. Maybe if we move into red, we can just take this. Otherwise, Steadfast Sentry is fine. It's okay. I wouldn't mind in Marauder's Axe with the current Flyers we have here. The black cards I don't really give a crap about too often. Goblin Smuggler is a good card, and we do have some 2-powered creatures already, so I can see myself moving to a 4th color maybe. Other than that, there's a Steadfast Sentry, which I wouldn't mind as a fine 3-drop to keep ourselves in white. But it's nothing too amazing. The 2 toughness is a little bit problematic. Giving a 1/1 counter to creature is pretty nice, however. Marauder's Axe gives us some action for our Flyers against an aggressive since we are looking to be aggressive. It's a fine late game mana sink and it's good. It's a nice card to put on our Flyers, so that's really nice. So now what? I think it's really just between these 3 cards. Maybe we can just stick with white and pick the Steadfast Sentry. He's not too exciting. Kind of passable, to be honest. Fine 3-drop. Or, I mean, I can still speculate on the Goblin Smuggler. It would be a 4th color, but it's still early in the pack, so, I mean, we aren't really committed to color right off the bat. We're most likely going to stick, right now we're looking at blue, white, splashing green, but maybe one of the other colors aren't open that we could just be in red, most likely. That being said, Goblin Smuggler is really good. I think I'm just going to take it here, speculate on red. Could take an okay Marauder's Axe for Flyers or Steadfast Sentry, but yeah, let's risk it. I don't think the other cards make too big of a difference. Okay, now what do we open? A bunch of black cards again. Same 4 black cards that were in the pack. That were in the pack before the one that we just drafted. That we just picked the Goblin Smuggler out of. So black can just be open. But again, these are mediocre. Don't really think they're exceptional. There's Daybreak Chaplain's a fine 2-drop. I think we can take Evolving Wilds now to help us splash for the Ironroot Warlord. I'm totally down for that. I think it has a lot more upside than the Daybreak Chaplain 2-drop blocker, so Evolving Wilds it is. Okay, now what? There's a Bone Splinters in case we move into black, but doesn't seem like we're moving in towards black. Then again, a bunch of pump spells. Follows a mediocre combat trick. The red cards aren't too exciting. Green cards are kind of meh. Yeah, I think I like the Steadfast Sentry. Kind of solidify our 3-drops. Gives us a fine 3-drop attacker that's not good at trading off too often, but giving a counter on a flyer perhaps is pretty decent. So let's take this okay 3-drop. Move on. Right, nothing too that I want to pick here. There's a 1. Is there any way to destroy to enable to deal 5 damage to something? Not really. I'd rather just play Heart Piercer Bow. I think it can just be an angelic gift here, since it looks like we're kind of moving to white. Being able to give a life linker or a creature flying drawing card's pretty nice. Otherwise, anticipate's kind of filler. So yeah, let's take the angelic gift. It's pretty powerful with Ironroot Warlord if you can get that flying. Speaking of flying, I do like the Daybreak Chaplain with the Angelic Gift. Can be pretty powerful. Now, if we end up with a Marauder's Axe with this card, it can be pretty nice. So yeah, let's just take it here. Now there's a late Blade Brand, might just take it over nothing. Okay, I like the Inspired Captain as a nice Anthem effect on 4. So it seems like I'm going to stick with white for now. I think we picked up too many white cards in this pack 1, in this first pack, that I don't think I want to move out of it. Let's just keep white as our primary color and not drift too far apart from our goal. Okay. So heading to the second pack, where we're looking at, looks like our primary color is white. We could move out blue anytime, even though we have some nice flyers. We can move into green, white, go wide, blue, white, flyers, maybe even black, white, life gain. Given that the last couple of packs, a bunch of white, black cards were still there. Okay black cards, but nothing exciting like Audacious Thief. So yep. White is definitely our primary color, and yep, let's move on. Alright, speaking of white, there is the Lockstone Life Chanter, which is a powerful card in white. I don't think it is a bomb. I think it's a really good card, however. Just being able to gain life when you're behind is really relevant. This is a really good card that's great at blocking. The 6 toughness is really hard to deal with. Also, if the opponent doesn't have an answer to tap or to keep this or lock this down, it will just keep attacking. The opponent will be forced to chump every single turn. Otherwise, the threat of activation can just win you the game. So I like it here. What else is in this pack? There's this figure if we want to move into black. There's Aerial Assault, which it's okay, keeps us in white, but it's a card where you want to play with, again, flyers. And if you are more controlling and you're staying in the back foot while the opponent's attacking you, not really a card I like to play in aggressive decks, but can be serviceable. And then there's a Sleep Paralysis. And then what else? There's a Goblin Smuggler in red. So if Lockstone wasn't in this pack, I'd probably just take the Disfigure and maybe hedge a little bit towards black. I think it's a way better card than Sleep Paralysis. Sleep Paralysis would keep us in blue, but kind of lowers our flexibility. Maybe blue isn't open. Like the first pack, blue didn't seem pretty open, so I don't really want to hedge my bets against Sleep Paralysis. It's a fine removal spell, but this figure is definitely better. But I'm happy that now we have a curved topper in white in our colors, and Loxodon Life Enchanter is definitely a powerful card. So let's take it here. Alright, ooh, well, yeah, I guess we're going to stick with Azorius Fliers here. Empyrean Ego is just such a great card. It's not something I would probably pick in a pick 1 pack 1 unless I don't have a choice. But I think the power level of this is incredibly high if you can get that going. Given that we already have some blue cards, I think this is the right choice in this pack. Otherwise, nothing else. If we took the Disfigure, I'd probably still be picking the Empyrean Ego in this pack 2. There's really nothing that compares to it, and this is a powerful build around. Blue-White Flyers is a good archetype, and I think we have the core cards to get that going as of right now. So happy to be in these in blue-white in the pack 1 and now in pack 2. So yep, Blue-White Flyers it is. Let's not deviate from that. Maybe splashing. Well, Risen Reef is busted, but don't think this is the card I want to splash for. Like, honestly, it is the best card in this pack, but we're already in white. White doesn't really have a lot of elementals to get this going. Even if I splash for this, it probably gets like 1 or 2 triggers off, which could be okay, but not really something too powerful. Now, what else do we have in this pack? We have a bow. If we open up a weaponsmith, this can be pretty nice. Raise the Alarm as solid playable on 2, and then Steadfast Sentry as an okay 3-drop. So nothing too exciting in our colors, but I don't think it's worth speculating the Risen Reef for, given that the teamer colors seem to have sailed, and we want to keep ourselves in blue-white Flyers. That being said, what do I pick out of this pack? We could use a little bit more 2-drops, and Raise the Alarm can be pretty nice. Works well with Inspired Captain, works well with the Iron Root Warlord, pretty much can surprise an opponent and trade off their 1/1 Death Touchers, or Scorch Spitters early in the game. Heart Piercer would be nice too, if I can get that going. It does make me incentivized to pick up multiples of these, and these can get really out of hand if you pick up a million copies of these. But you really need a weaponsmith to get this, to fetch this out in order to have make this a very powerful card. I have played against opponents who have drafted bows without the Renowned Weaponsmith, and they have worked. It does take a lot of setup, and sometimes you might be playing against an opponent with not a lot of 1 toughness creatures. That being said, I think I'm fine taking a Raised Alarm as a safer choice. It's a fine 2-drop in case we don't have any. It can surprise the opponent. Can be a nice way to pump the I forgot the Griffin Sentinel. Not the Griffin Sentinel. The 4-mana flyer in white. I forgot the name, where when an creature enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1. I think I want to get stack myself with enough early game in this blue-white Flyers deck over the 3-drop, which is fine, but gets quite expensive around 3. So yeah, let's just get a mediocre 2-drop and move on. All right. Well, Warden of Evos Isle is what we're looking for in a blue-white Flyers deck. Otherwise, I'd probably be looking at an Unsummon over the Octoprophet. Octoprophet is fine, don't get me wrong, but I would prefer Unsummon as interaction against opponent's creatures to work it out. Yep, it's got to be the Warden of Evos Isles with the Loyal Pegasus, Metropolis, Bright Cloud, Seer, and Pyrean Eagle. Don't think I'm going to pivot away against Flyers. It looks like blue is open in this pack. So I'm happy that it is. And next pack we can try to solidify our white cards, since they seem to have been showing up a lot with the bot on our right. So Warden it is. Now what? I like the Winged Words over the Inspired Charge. We already have Inspiring Captain that kind of does a similar effect. Winged Words is probably the most powerful card in this pack. So yeah, let's take it here. Oop, happy with an Aerial Assault. Don't think there's any reason to splash for Tomebound Lich. Not really a good card you want to splash for anyway, so easy Aerial Assault as interaction. I guess I can take another Inspiring Captain. There's also Anvil Rot Raptor, which I wouldn't mind, to be honest. The 1 toughness can be a bit of a liability, but having this with a discount with, let's say, Warden and having the buff from Imperial and Eagle can be really nice. Other than that, I guess it's a fine 4-drop. We already have an Inspiring Captain. I mean, usually two or 1 should be enough to enable this to get going. I think since we're moving to blue-white Flyers deck, we kind of want to at least have a flyer at 4. We might not take it because 1 toughness can be bad to bows. So maybe Inspiring Captain is worth it over Inspired Charge. But you never know. I think these tend to wheel anyways, and we really just need one of these. One more of these. Any one of these. So yeah, let's speculate on a Raptor. Now what? In case we open up a Weaponsmith, there's a Stone Golem. Moments of mediocre combat trick. Usually doesn't work out. There's a Gauntlets of Lights that we can speculate on. We can attach this to maybe the Daybreak Chaplain and start getting in 5/5 Lifelinker going. This works well with cards that already have high toughness, so I can. But it can get stuck in your hand if you have nothing to play with it, and it becomes a pretty bad card. So don't think it's a Gauntlets of Light. I can see this working well with a Fencing Ace, but that's kind of niche. Maybe just a Moment in case we need a pump spell. I mean, it's pretty bad anyways, so I think a Disenchant makes more sense in case we're playing against in case we run into any problematic enchantments that we don't like. So yeah, let's take a Disenchant. Okay, nothing else. I guess a Frilled Sea Serpent, but yeah, let's just take the Incumbent for Revolt. Another 2-drop blocker. Don't think milling is the strategy of this deck. It is the first one we got. Probably take a 3rd Chaplain as insurance as a 2-drop. Otherwise, hardcover doesn't really do much for us. Now I can take a bow. I might run this without Weaponsmith, but we could open up a Weaponsmith next pack. Does get crazy in multiples over pretty much nothing. There's another Raptor, but it's another 4-drop that I need to commit myself towards. It can get a discount from Warden, but I would need Warden into the battlefield first, and having a 4-mana 2/1 flying in your hand when you have nothing to play early on kind of sucks. I think I want to speculate on a Moprana, maybe cut a Daybreak Chaplain for it, just as a fine blocker against ground creatures, so yeah, let's just take it here. I think I'm fine trading a Chaplain for a Moprana, because I'd rather have Moat at the end of the day. Lifelink doesn't seem to be a big deal. Okay, Stone Column in case we get a Weaponsmith to ramp out next pack. Okay, so, yep, looking at the final pack, what are we looking for? We could use another Anthem effect at 4. Maybe a Weaponsmith that we can draft a bunch of bows at. With in terms of interaction, I think we need a couple. I think we need some unsummons. Another Pacifism will be fine. Another Aerial Assault would be nice. We don't have much in terms of removal, so that can be a bit problematic. We could use another tap dual land to splash this Ironroot Warlord, which I'm looking forward to, but I'm fine if we don't splash this because we're looking to attack in the air anyways, and this can be a bit of a detriment. So, yep, our deck is looking really nice here. We could pick up a second Empyrean Eagle, which can be pretty busted. But, yep, let's move on. Okay, pack 2, what do we take? Another Warden would be great. Fencing Ace is okay. There's a dual land to help splash for the Ironroot Warlord, but I don't think I'd take it over to Warden here. Pretty much a mediocre pack as far as I know of. Murder is the strongest card, but we can't move into black at this point. We need to pick up enough playables to upgrade over. So, I guess I can either speculate on the Sprite, the Warden, or the dual land. Don't think it's Griffin. Griffin's fine as a blocker and a flyer, but it really needs some weapons and attack equipments on it until it gets powerful, which we don't have any currently. Don't think it's a 2-drop. In terms of 2-drop, I think we have a stable 2-drop base. The Mopron is a fine blocker. Daybreak Chaplain, Raise the Alarm, Loyal Pegasus could be fine. We could take Sprite just to give us even more flyers early on. That being said, is that better than Warden? Warden does give us a discount with our flyers. Or if we take the dual land, we can splash the Ironroot Warlord. But again, I think we're looking to win through the air and not the ground. So I think I prefer the Warden over the Ironroot Warlord at the end of the day. I mean, Sprite tends to wheel and usually is a fine 2-drop. I think the upside Warden giving us discounts is way higher than everything else. So, yep, Warden it is. Okay, I'm happy with an Ancestral Blade as an excellent 2-drop. There's also a Flame Sweep we could potentially splash for. Very powerful card, especially if you are playing in the Flyers deck. But right now we have Evolving Wilds as our only mana fixing here that I don't really... We will probably need to play 2 mountains to get this going, which could interfere with our double colors, and sometimes it's better to just stick with 2 colors. In this case, Ancestral Blade is pretty excellent. Nice equipment to put on our flyers, especially the first striker. Just having this as a 2/2 is nice, and then having a permanent equipment onto the battlefield that can give any creature +1/+1 in the late or mid game is really nice for 1 mana. So yeah, Ancestral Blade is definitely a powerful 2-drop we need in this deck. So yep, let's just take it. Happy with our Cloud Concealer over Dawning Angel. Yeah, Cloud Concealer draws you a card. Our deck can be pretty weak to bows, but that's really the risk that you're going to take if you're going to go flyers anyways. I don't think there's any way we can counter a bow deck. I think we just have to kind of accept a loss if we face up against those annoying opponents. Like 1 bow is manageable, but 2 bows can pretty much make us lose the game unless we try to match again with the Locks on Life Enchanter. But here it's obviously Cloudkin over Dawning Angel. Cheaper card, draws you a card. What else can you ask for? Life gain is fine, but yeah, let's draw some cards. Happy with Boreal Elemental as another Curve Topper in 5. We do look like we have a hole at 5, and I don't really want to play Stone Golem, so let's cut that out. Yep, probably the only pick here. A nice flyer. You can potentially play on turn 4 with Warden, which is pretty powerful. Otherwise, there's a Scuttlemutt, but yep, happy that Boreal's open here. So it looks like blue is still open in this pack, which I find quite surprising, given that blue wasn't that open. So now Portal of Sanctuary can do some work. Let's see. It's a fine sideboard card, I think, but I don't really think it's something in our main deck. But the rest of these other cards look pretty bad, like Bone to Ash and Frilled Sea Serpents and Soul Mentor are kind of like, mediocre. We already have a Disenchant. What does Portal synergize with? It can synergize with the Cloudkin Seers, I guess, and maybe the Loxodon. So it doesn't really do much, honestly, so it's kind of bad. I mean, I can see playing this if I can in a black-blue control deck, or black-green with Agent of Treachery and lots of enter the battlefield effects, but I don't think it's worth it here. Maybe Bone to Ash could be fine. Sometimes you hit something with this, and it's pretty nice for winning the opponent by drawing a card off of this. So, yeah, maybe we can try Bone to Ash. Not a really big fan of this card, but Portal doesn't really do much anyways. So, Bone to Ash I can at least see being playable. Do I try the Devout Decree plan? Not really. Kind of narrow. Just like another 4-drop Anthem effect can be nice with a bunch of flyers. Yep, happy with another Inspiring Captain. 4 mana can be expensive, but puts a 3/3 body and buffs our flyers to smack the opponent in for lethal. So yep, Inspiring Captain it is. Now what? Another bow, but there's no weaponsmiths. We didn't pick up any. Don't think we're going with the bow plan, to be honest. So we can pretty much make out our deck here. I guess Angelic Gift is cuttable. We don't really need to give anything flying since we have so many flyers already. Mo Piranha is cuttable. Bone to Ash is cuttable. Ironroot Warlord's cuttable. So we kind of have our deck here. We could cut the Steadfast Sentry as well and the Anvil Rot Raptor. But let's say we cut those two. We just pretty much need 3 playables. But by now, I think we have a solid deck. What are we looking to upgrade over? Like, do I really need the second bow? I mean, I can take this just to speculate on perhaps maybe a late Renowned Weaponsmith. And the bots do tend to pass them up. And I can definitely see his deck playing Weaponsmith because it can ramp out the Raptor. And we already have a second bow, which should go pretty well in this deck. Because Ardent That Anticipate is just a card that replaces itself. Can help search some cards that we need, but you use up 2 mana of the entire turn just to find it. So, yeah, let's speculate on the bow here. No late Renowned Weaponsmith, but I'm happy with Fencing Ace as a decent 2-drop. Don't think I need Inspired Charge with double Inspiring Captain. Works well with Ancestral Blade, fine 2-drop, okay 2-drop. Yeah, let's take it here. Okay, now what? There's Griffin Sentinel, but it's another 3-drop, and our 3-drop slot looks clunky. So let's take our creature spells out of the way for a moment. Well, we have a bunch of creatures already. We have barely any interaction, to be honest. Maybe Bone Dash, and that's about it. So we aren't really looking to win through killing the opponent's stuff, I don't think. I think we're just going to try to win by doing what exactly this deck intends to do, which is smashing him in the air. I think I prefer Metropolis Sprite over Griffin Sentinel as just a much more earlier game card that we play. Our 2s are looking stat, but I can definitely see myself cutting some of the 2s like Raise the Alarm or a Daybreak Chaplain to fin our flyer. And definitely prefer over Fencing Ace, just because it gets the upside from the Empyrean Eagle. So yep, let's take it here. Alright, so I guess we didn't pick up enough removal, but hopefully we can cheese the opponent out. Angelic Gift, yeah, we'll put that in the sideboard. Alright, I don't think we're splashing for like a 3rd color for the Ironroot Warlord. Pick 1, pack 1, pick 3, pack 1. I could have gotten the dual land, but I think our deck made more sense with the Warden and Evil's Isle, to be honest. Alright, so we have a pretty strong blue-white Flyers deck. Happy with this deck. So now let's try to build this. We just need one more cut. Is it possible that we just cut the squad captain, maybe? I think I like Raptor with double Warden in this deck. nice discount, gets a nice buff from Imperial Eagle, nice flyer to go synergize with Aerial Assault and Winged Word, so I like that. I mean, Steadfast Sentry is also kind of cuttable. I do like the double Inspiring Captains. Don't mind the Fencing Ace as a 2-drop. Do we need to play Heart Piercer Bow? Probably not. It's kind of expensive to equip. It only deals with 1 toughness creatures for the most part. In terms of removal, we have Pacifism. We have probably Raise the Alarm, but that's not good enough. Aerial Assault. So yeah, it looks like this does not look like the deck that seems to be out to kill the opponent's stuff. Looks like we're just going to race the opponent for the most part. I think Bow is cuttable. 3 mana, put an artifact that pings the opponent for 1 seems kind of mediocre. Other than that, I guess this is pretty much our deck. I think it's 17 lands with Squad Captain as one of our curve toppers. This deck does look like it's trying to go wide simply because it's 18 creatures. Inspiring Captain works well with this. So now what? We have a bunch of Flyers, a bunch of creatures to play out onto. Steadfast Sentry should be fine. Is there anything that we replace? Could we make room for an Angelic Gift? It works well with the Loxodon squad, maybe Inspiring Captain, Sentry. But it's kind of awkward if you have a bunch of Flyers in your hand already. Giving another creature flying just to cycle this seems pretty bad. Daybreak Chaplain is just a fine 2-drop blocker. Can give some lifelink, but maybe I can cut the Daybreak Chaplain. I mean, it can attack, so it does work well with the Loyal Pegasus. Otherwise, Mole Piranhas can pretty much replace this, let's say, if we're racing against the ground. I mean, we probably have enough Flyers anyways to just attack, so I mean, maybe it's fine playing Mole Piranhas over the Chaplain. I mean, it would suck if we play this on 1 and the only 2-drop is Mole Piranhas and this can't attack through on 1, but that's kind of a rare scenario, to be honest, when we have all these Flyers attacking in already. So I'd rather just take a 3/3 blocker over a 1/3. Don't think I need Denizen. It's kind of bad. Bone to Ash is too expensive to counter an opponent's creature. And then there's Bow, which I can argue taking, to be honest. I mean, we can try out the Bow. But other than that, I'm not a big fan of it. I think we can win without it. Yeah, let's try this out. Now, mana base, we're looking to favor white over blue. But let's see. But we have pretty decent amount of blue cards as 2-drops anyway, so I think we just keep it even split within Evolving Wilds. I think this makes sense. Pretty nice blue-white Flyers deck. So yeah, I think I like this deck. I think the Mole Piranha can do some work simply as a ground blocker. I think it has a lot more upside than the Bow. Just to trade off, or, you know, if we have nothing to play on 2, this can stall the opponent out in whatever they play. If they're playing a really aggressive deck, this works really well. So yeah, I'm going to make a part 2 video on this. Stay tuned.